Okay, so in the today's class we will talk about how we can reduce a relation schema into we can reduce a ER diagram into a relational schema. Okay, as I earlier told you that whenever you want to model uh, a database of any organization, you need to create a ER diagram first. Once you have a ER diagram that represents all the possible and all the entities that are that has to be taken care, or that has to be represented in the system, then you also identified the relationship that you depict in your ER diagram, all the attributes of entity sets and relationship sets, and cardinality of relationship sets, specialization, and so on. So you have depicted each and everything about the organization into your ER diagram. Now it's time to transform this ER diagram into a relational database. Okay, because ultimately you need to develop a relational database. Okay, so ER diagram need to be translated into a relational model. Okay, so we will see that how we can transform a given ER diagram into a relation schema. Okay, so let's discuss one by one. So first you will you see you have many elements in your ER diagram. You have entity sets, you have relationship sets, you have strong entity sets, you have weak entity sets, you have mapping cardinalities, and so on. You have keys, etc. So we will discuss one by one how we can transform them into a relational model. So first thing that you need to transform into a relational model is your entity set. Okay, so whatever entity set you will have, it will be translated into a table. Okay, how? Let's see. Okay, so let's see this example. Suppose that you have a entity set course ID, you have a entity set which is a weak entity set 1 section, and you have corresponding relationship section course. Okay, so let's first talk about strong entity sets. We will talk about weak entity set later. Okay, so when you have a strong entity set, you will reduce it into a single table. Your strong entity set will be transformed into a table. Like you see that here you have a course, so with let's say course ID, title, and credit. Okay, so you will create a table in your database, let's say with the name course. Okay, and you can take title any other name also, but it is always advisable that you should choose a relevant name for entity set, and usually in your ER diagram you choose a relevant name, so that name can be taken as the name of the table. Okay, however there is no any kind of rule of thumb like this. So we will have a table course with some attributes like course ID, then title, and I guess this was the attribute, third attribute, credit. Okay, so you will have a table like this. So you see that your course entity set has been translated into a course table, where the attributes that you have mentioned in the course entity set will become the columns. Okay, got it? Let me repeat again. The strong entity set that you have in your ER diagram will be converted into a table, or will be transformed into a table. The name of the table will be same as the name of the entity set, and you will take all the attributes that you have depicted in your ER diagram, and these attributes will become field, or you can say columns of the table. So in this example we were having a entity set course with these three attributes, so I have marked this table with these three elements like this. So this table pictorially if you want to represent, you will have a course table like this. You have 3 columns. Here you have course ID, then title, then credits. Okay, so in this way this will be your table, and when you create this table into the database, you can put values there. Okay, so this is how you will create a table from entity set. Now you need to take care certain things also. This was a very simple example. There may be some different points that you should take care of, or some different concepts or important concepts that you need to take care of while converting your entity set into a table. Okay, first thing you need to take care of is that you need to mark the key. Okay, so you need to choose a key so the key of the entity set will become the key of your table. Okay, remember that the key of your entity set will become the key of the table. Okay, usually it will be this and this key means primary key. Okay, this is primary key. So you can mark like this, course ID. In this case, you know that course ID was the key for course entity set, so the course ID will become key attribute or primary key of the table. Got it? So this is the first thing that you should remember. Your key will be the key of the entity set will be the key of the table. Now you should also remember that we have discussed that a entity set can have different kind of attributes also. Okay, so in this example, this was a very simple example. You were having all simple attributes. There was no composite attribute, there was no multi-valued attribute, there was no derived attribute. Okay, so the things were very simple in this example. But in reality, in different cases, you can have different kind of attributes. So let's understand. Suppose if an entity set have a composite attribute, then how we will transform that entity set into a table. So let me assume that we have a student entity set. Let's assume that we have a student entity set like this. Let me draw it. So title of the entity set is, let's say, student. Then you can have enrollment number. This is one attribute, and let's suppose this was marked as the key. Then name of the student, and assume that this name is divided into 3 parts. First name, I am just drawing a line, but it is written actually by just giving some indentation. Okay, so don't buy this notation. Then middle name, I'm not using any notation, I'm just writing for my convenience or your convenience. Middle name, then last name. So this will be a composite attribute. Okay, similarly, one minute. Okay, and let's take one more example. Add some more attribute, like let's say contact. contact number, and assume that this is a, can you tell me what is this kind of attribute? Which attribute is written in curly braces? Which kind of attribute is written in curly braces? Anybody? Anyone? Tell me. Which attribute is written in this way? नहीं बताएगा कोई? Are you able to hear me or not?
Yes, sir.
So, what kind of attribute is this? I have written this attribute in curly brackets. सब भूल गए? You should remember. It is a multi-valued attribute. This attribute can have multiple values. Then let's say date of birth. Let's assume it is not, it is being treated as a single attribute. It is a simple attribute. It cannot be divided further. And maybe you have age. And can you tell me what kind of attribute is this? Age.
So derived attribute.
Okay, it is a derived attribute. Okay, so let's see how we will convert this table into, or this entity set into tables. Okay, so you know that this is a strong entity set and its key is enrollment number. So first you need to create a table, obviously with student name. So I am just creating a table with name student. Okay, so it will have attribute enrollment number. All simple attribute will come as it is. So enrollment number is a simple attribute. Yes, so enrollment number will come as a same attribute here, and since it is a key attribute in your entity relationship diagram, so we will mark it as a key. So it will be your primary key. Then you see that name attribute is a composite attribute. Okay, so whenever you have a composite attribute in your entity set, you will create a table for every component of the table, sorry, of the composite attribute. So you see that this have 3 components, and remember that for intermediate components no column will be created. The columns will be created for only, you can say, like lowest level components. Let me tell you what I mean. First let's discuss this, then I will give you one more example of this. So we will have three attributes for this table. We will have mark first name as a column. So we will have 3 column first name, then we will have column middle name, then we will have third column last name. Let me make it capital for it. Okay, the name of the column, it is not necessary that it will start from capital letter. You can take any title. Okay, last name, usually they are kept in small case, that becomes very convenient for users itself. Last name. Okay, so this is how we will deal with such attribute, which or a composite attribute. So for all components, so you know that name have 3 components, so I have created 3 columns in this table for these 3 components. Okay, and then you see that there is a multi-valued attribute. We will talk about later how we will deal with it. then we have date of birth. Then age, you know that age is a derived attribute and it can be computed using date of birth. You just need to subtract current date from the date of birth and you will get the age of the student. So this attribute will not be stored into your database, so we will not create any column for this. So in this case we will have a table student with 1 2 3 4 5 columns. Now you see that I have not done anything with this attribute. Okay, why? Let me tell you. So whenever a table have multi-valued attribute, what we will do, we actually do not include this attribute into the original table. Okay, we will actually create an additional table for this attribute. Okay, so this multi-valued attribute will go into another table. So let's take a name of the table, student contact, because in this table we are going to store contact of the student. So student contact. Okay, so here we will take the key of the entity set. You know that enrollment number is the key and contact number. Okay, so you know that for multi-valued attribute I have created a separate table by taking the key and the multi-valued attribute. Got it? So if your entity set have one multi-valued attribute, you will create a separate table for that attribute. Name you can take anything. I have taken a relevant name so that it will be easily understood by anyone that this table contains contact information of student. So enrollment number and contact number and contact number will become two attributes or two columns of this table. Okay, why enrollment number? This is the key attribute actually. Okay, and what will be the key of this table? Both the attributes will behave as a key. Okay, enrollment number will not work as a key here. Why? Because in this table, let's say one student having enrollment number 100 and it have contact number X, then again you will have a record student enrollment number 100, then contact number Y. The same student may have multiple contacts, so you can have two or more than two rows with the same enrollment number. So that means enrollment number alone will not be able to differentiate each and every row. So as per the definition of the key, you cannot make enrollment number as the key. So what you will do, we will take combination of both the attributes. So these two attributes jointly behave as a primary key of this table. Got it? Any query? Any query?
No, sir.
Okay. So,
Sir, repeat again, sir.
What you didn't understood that ask? Don't tell me to repeat everything.
सर वो जो हम मल्टी वैल्यूड वाला है सर जो है उसको थोड़ा सा फिक्स है अगेन सर थोड़ा अंडरस्टैंड नहीं कर पाया.
Okay. So as I told you that if a table is having if an entity set is having multi-valued attribute, that multi-valued attribute will not come into the original table. You see that this is our main table that we have created for student entity set. Okay, and we have not stored this or provided any space to multi-valued attribute in this table. Actually, whenever an entity set have multi-valued attribute, we create a separate table for that attribute. So in this case, student have a multi-valued attribute contact number, and multi-valued attribute का मतलब क्या होता है? I guess, do you know what is multi-valued attribute? बताओ जल्दी से मनीष. What is multi-valued attribute?
सर मल्टी ऐसे सर वो उसका वैल्यू चेंज होते रहता है मल्टीपल सर टाइम टू टाइम.
No, that is not the case. Multi-valued attribute attribute is attribute that can have multiple values. A entity for that attribute can have multiple values. Contact number, a student can have multiple contact number. You might have 3 phone numbers or 4 phone numbers. Somebody may have 1 number, somebody may have 2 numbers. So this is meaning of multi-valued attribute. मैंने आपसे पहले भी कहा था, इसीलिए बेसिक डेफिनेशंस आपको क्लियर होना चाहिए. दैट्स वाई यू डिडंट गॉट इट कि स्टूडेंट कॉन्टैक्ट टेबल क्यों बनाई मैंने. यू आर नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टूड दिस कॉन्सेप्ट. सो प्लीज़ remember each and every definition of the ER diagram, otherwise you will face lot of difficulties. Okay, so multi-valued attribute means multiple values are possible for that attribute. You know that any person, a student will have only one date of birth, will have only one name, will have only one enrollment number, but they can have multiple contact number. Age will be also one. So these are the simple attributes. They do not have multiple values. So non-value, you can say that they are non-multi-valued attribute. Okay. So you didn't ask me, but let me tell you what happens when suppose an entity set have two multi-valued attribute. What you will do in that case? So suppose here maybe you have one more attribute which is multi-valued, that is address. Assume that there are multiple addresses of the student. Let's assume for the time being they are having multiple addresses. So I am adding this attribute address. Now what we will do? So it is not very complicated. What you will do actually, you will create separate table for this multi-valued attributes also. So actually if an entity set have, let's say, 4 multi-valued attribute, then 4 additional tables will be created. So in this case student is having 2 multi-valued attribute, and so 2 additional tables will be created. So we will create another table, student address. Okay, enrollment number and address, and I am assuming address as a simple attribute, not composite one. Okay, if it is composite, you can take multiple columns according to number of components it has. Okay, got it? So if a table have 2 multi-valued attributes, you will create 2 tables. And remember, in case of multi-valued attributes, both the elements or all the elements you are taking or all the attributes will behave as a key. Enrollment number alone will not be the key. Both attributes will work as a key. Okay. Now let me give you one more example of this case, name, which was a composite attribute. So let's take one more case of composite attribute. Now it may be the case that in a student table, in separate scenario, you have different attributes and then you have an address attribute which is divided into, let's say, street, city and pin. Okay, and then this street is also divided into multiple components. Let's say house number, then colony, or maybe let's take these two actually, house number and colony. So street is divided into 2 elements. So how we will create the table for this? Let's suppose student have attribute enrollment number, which is the key, enrollment number, ENROL, enrollment number, this is the key. So how we will create this table for this attribute actually, or how we will give a space to this attribute. So actually what we will do, you see that how many components are there. This is one low level component, this is one, this is one, and this is one. That means we will not consider this as a column into your table, because you know this attribute has been divided into this attributes further. Now imagine it may be that colony may be divided into, let's say, 2 further attributes, then we will not create column for colony, we will just create lowest level attributes actually. Or you can understand this example like this. If you create a tree of this attribute, so you have address is divided into, let's say, street. आप एड्रेस को हायरार्की में ट्री के फॉर्म में डिनोट कर सकते हैं ना, सिटी एंड पिन. देन street have house number and colony. So how many columns you will create, or for what attributes or what sub components you will create columns. So one column you will create for this, for this, for this, and for this. So you see that I am creating columns for only to the with the leaf, for the leaf nodes in this case. So these are the components, or you can identify here itself also. These are the components. So we can have a table like this in this case, or for this example, student. Then I am not considering other attributes. Okay, there may be other attributes, but I am not listing there those attributes there. So student enrollment number. Then what we have? Then we have from this side we can take, sorry for this, house number, colony, city, pin. So we will have house number, comma, colony, city, pen, and other attributes will also be there like this. So this is how we will create a table for a strong entity set. I hope अब आप लोगों को क्लियर हो गया होगा सर. So this is how you will deal with different kind of attributes that comes into a table. Any question? Any question?
No, sir.
So let's move ahead. So we have seen that if we have a strong entity set, how we will transform this strong entity set into a table. Now let's talk about weak entity set. So if you have a weak entity set into your table or your ER diagram, you need to create, or you can create tables like this. For entity set, actually you create a table. So here you see that we have section entity set. So for section we will create a table. I will change, let's do it, then I will modify what I am saying. Section. So you will create a section, you will create a table for section. Section having attributes section ID, semester, and year. So section ID, then semester, then you have year. Okay, and you know that this is a discriminator. Now you see that this way the things will not go down work, because you know that section is a weak entity set. It is a weak entity set. So this will not work as a key actually completely, because you know that section or any weak entity set has a discriminator only. So this underlying set of attributes do not behave as a key, they behave as a discriminator only. So obviously this will not be sufficient. So what you have to do, because you know that section for its identification depends on course, so you need to include course ID also. So let me add that attribute and redefine this entity set attribute. So actually in reality, rather than above kind of table, we will have a following kind of table. We will borrow course ID attribute from corresponding entity set. Corresponding entity set means the strong entity set on which this entity set depends for its identification. So जब कभी भी वीक एंटिटी सेट आपके पास आएगा तो आपको उसकी टेबल बनाते समय क्या करना है, all the attributes of weak entity set will be added with the key of the corresponding strong entity set. So a corresponding strong entity set in this case was course ID, so I have taken course ID, then section ID, semester, comma year. So course ID के साथ जो भी attributes होंगे आपके, you will add those attributes into the table. Got it? Now question arises, which attribute will behave as the key? So obviously the discriminator plus the key of corresponding attribute. So you know that all these three attributes were the discriminator and this was the key. So all four attributes jointly will be the key. So this is how you will create a table from weak entity set. So remember, when you go for creating a table for weak entity set, you will take the key from the corresponding entity set on which it depends. So you need to take the key of that attribute, and all the attributes of the weak entity set will be part of the table. So you will have this table section. In this way you will create a section table. Now let me take one more example. Okay, let's talk about what about the relationship. So for the relationship case we will talk about later. Okay, we are not discussing relationships, how to transform relationship into table. So we will come to that topic again later, or on this example later. So let me give you one more example. So let's suppose we have an entity set, ER diagram like this. We have a loan entity set with loan number, which is the key of this entity set. Maybe term of the loan, then branch which have issued the loan, then loan amount. Let's assume these are the attributes that this loan entity set has. And you also know that we have discussed this example also. There is a payment entity set. We have EMI number, then you can have due date and amount paid. EMI में कितना amount paid किया. Sometimes you pay fixed amount of EMI, sometimes you pay more than the EMI. So that's why I am taking about this attribute. You know that EMI number will be the discriminator for this. So it will be represented by dotted notation actually, not the complete line. So let me improve it. So this is the discriminator. Okay, sometimes we call it partial key also. And here you will have a relationship. Loan payment अंडरस्कोर लगा दिया मैंने बीच में. पार्टिसिपेशन विल बी पार्ट टोटल. बाय डिफॉल्ट टोटल होता है वीक एंटिटी सेट के केस में. and this relationship, you know that it is called identifying relationship. Now how we will transform this into a table, this ER diagram into a table? So we will create a table for loan with attributes, like I am just writing that loan. We will have a table with attributes loan number, then term of the loan, then let's say branch name, amount. So this is the table that we will create for loan. Then we will create a table for payment. Okay, so in payment we will borrow the key. Here the loan number is the key. Okay, and now you see that I have not do anything special, because all these attributes were simple. There was no composite attribute, there was no derived attribute, there was no multi-valued attribute. Okay, so remember, whenever you are creating a table, you need to take care of that. If there is any composite attribute, the table will be created differently. If you have multiple attributes, you need to create separate tables for multi-valued attributes by just borrowing the key. So payment के केस में क्या होगा? We will have loan number. Why loan number? Because payment depends on loan number entity set for the identification. So its key should be here, loan number and EMI number. So this is a discriminator. So these two attributes, discriminator plus the key of the corresponding entity set, will become the key. Then due date, बीच में अंडरस्कोर है, then amount paid. Okay, so this is how you will create table for weak entity set. Got it? Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so now let's move ahead with another example. So now we have seen that how we can transform an entity set into a table. So let's take this example. You see that in this diagram you have two entity sets, instructor and student. So one table will be created for instructor with three attributes: ID, name, salary. Another table will be created for student: ID, name with total credit. So these three attributes will be there. Now question is how we will create table for this attribute, or sorry, this relationship advisor. So the table of relationships are also created in your ER diagram. Okay, whenever you have a table, you need relationship between two attributes, you need to create a table for relationship also. One table will always be there for a relationship also. However, there are certain exceptions, we will talk about them later. So instructor और student के लिए table बन जाएगी. Let's transform this ER diagram into a relational model. So we will have a table name with instructor. What attributes will be there? ID, name and salary. And we will have a table student with ID, name and total credits. Okay, here ID will be the key, here ID will be the key. आप लिख सकते हैं यहाँ इंस्ट्रक्टर आईडी डिफरेंशिएट करने के लिए. However, both tables are different, so there will be no confusion, but still it will be good idea to take instructor ID and student ID kind of name. Okay, but I'm not focusing on this. Now we need to create a table for this relationship also. Okay, so there is a relationship with the name advisor, so we need to create a table with the title advisor. Now question arise होता है कि this attribute, this relationship don't have any attribute. So how we will create table for this? We do not have any attribute. So how this table could be created? So you see that in this example there is no attribute of relationship. As I told you earlier that there may be some relationships that can have attributes. So if that relationship have attribute, that attribute will be the part of this table. Okay. But you know that still if a relationship doesn't have any table, there will be a table, doesn't have any attribute, there will be table for that. How? Actually what we will do, we will borrow both of the keys of the entity set that are at the two ends of this relationship. इस relationship के दोनों सिरों पर entity sets हैं, उनकी हम keys ले लेते हैं. So you know that advisor have two entity sets associated with instructor and student. So इन दोनों की key हमें अपने table में ले लेना है. So we will create a table advisor with two attributes, ID taken from here, ID taken from here. So now you see that दोनों का ID नाम ले लेंगे तो दिक्कत हो जाएगी. So we will write instructor ID, inst ID, let me write in brief, inst ID, comma student ID. So this attribute I am referring here, student ID. Okay. So this is how we will create table for relationship. So relationship की टेबल बनाने में करना क्या है, नथिंग स्पेशल. अगर जो दोनों साइड जो एंटिटीज हैं, इट इज़ अ बाइनरी रिलेशनशिप ऑब्वियसली, यूजुअली यू विल सी बाइनरी रिलेशनशिप. सो वट एवर एंटिटीज आर इन्वॉल्व, एनरी भी हैं तब भी, जितनी भी एंटिटीज इन्वॉल्व हैं उन सब की की आपको ले लेना है रिलेशनशिप में जो है. अगर दो एंटिटीज इन्वॉल्व हैं तो दोनों की की ले लेना है. इफ देयर आर 3 एंटिटी सेट्स इन्वॉल्व इन द रिलेशनशिप, तीनों की की ले लेना है, एंड सो ऑन. So most of the cases में you will have binary relationships. Okay, so you will take key of both the entity sets that are participating in the relationship. Okay, so this is how we will create table for advisor relationship. Now maybe some attribute is there, like say advising date, or the date where what that time teacher started advising. Okay, so advising beginning date or advising registration date, something kind of date, whatever attributes you have you can provide here. Okay, so in this example there is no attribute, in the other example there may be some attribute. Let me give you an example. You can have a ER diagram like this. You have a entity set account with some attribute. You have an entity set customer which is associated with that account. So there will be a relationship between account and a customer. Account is held by या owned by, something, जो भी term आपको इस्तेमाल करना है, I am just using held by. Now you see that this relationship will have may have an attribute account opening date. I am just using ACC underscore opening date. So this is an attribute. Now how we will create entity set, the table for this relationships? So actually this relationship table will have 3 attributes. One key taken from this. So let's say account number is the key here. So account number, let's say customer ID is the key here. So we take customer ID and account opening date, attribute of the relationship. Okay, so this is how you will create table for relationship. Now question arise होता है कि how we will decide the key of this relationship. How we will decide the key of this relationship table. So the table of the selection of the key of this relationship actually depends on the mapping cardinality. Okay, the mapping cardinality that exists here. So there are rule actually. So if this mapping is 1 to 1, if this mapping is 1 to 1, so if relationship have 1 to 1 mapping, so you should remember these rules. For 1 to 1 mapping, any key चाहे तो जैसे सपोज दैट अकाउंट और कस्टमर के बीच में वो मैपिंग कैसी है, 1 to 1, दैट मीन्स अकाउंट विल बी होल्ड बाय ओनली वन कस्टमर कैन हैव ओनली वन अकाउंट. सो इन दिस केस एनी ऑफ द की एट्रीब्यूट, चाहे तो आप यहाँ से एट्रीब्यूट जो लिया इसे की बना दीजिए रिलेशनशिप में, या यहाँ से बना दीजिए. तो आइदर अकाउंट नंबर कैन प्ले द रोल ऑफ की इन दिस टेबल, और कस्टमर आईडी कैन प्ले द रोल ऑफ की इन दिस टेबल. ठीक है. सो 1 to 1 जब मैपिंग होगी, किसी भी एट्रीब्यूट की जो है ना रिलेशनशिप में की बन जाएगी. सो लेट्स से मैंने जैसे अकाउंट नंबर को मार्क कर दिया, तो अगर ये 1 to 1 मैपिंग है, सपोज यहाँ पर 1 to 1 मैपिंग है, इफ दिस मैपिंग इज 1 to 1, देन आइदर की ऑफ दिस टेबल विल वर्क एज अ की हियर और दिस टेबल. ये आपको डिसाइड कर लेना है किसको की बनाना है. इट्स अप टू यू, इट्स योर कंप्लीट चॉइस. इसमें कोई और ऑप्शन नहीं है, आपको इच्छा है कोई भी एक की आप ले सकते हैं इसमें. लेट्स से मैंने अकाउंट नंबर को मार्क कर दिया, कुछ लोग हो सकता है कस्टमर आईडी को मार्क कर रहे हैं की के तौर पर. ओके. नाउ यू नो दैट देर इज नॉट केवल 1 to 1 अकेले ही मैपिंग पॉसिबल नहीं है. देर आर सम अदर मैपिंग्स आर ऑल्सो पॉसिबल. सो लाइक it may be the case that this mapping may be 1 to many, or maybe many to 1, or many to many. ठीक है. सो मैनी टू मैनी का केस थोड़ा सा अलग है. लेट्स टॉक अबाउट 1 to many केस और मैनी टू 1 केस. सो इफ योर cardinality of this relationship is either many to 1 or 1 to many, then the key of the many side relationship, key of the many side entity set will be the key of the relationship. So suppose that ये मैपिंग 1 to many है. 1 to many का मतलब क्या है, एक कस्टमर, वन अकाउंट कैन बी होल्ड बाय more than one customer, that means joint account kind of thing. So in that case customer ID will become the key, not this account number. ठीक है. इसका रीजन हम नॉर्मलाइजेशन के ड्यूरेशन में समझेंगे, बट यू शुड रिमेंबर हियर एट दिस मोमेंट ऑफ टाइम दैट द इफ रिलेशनशिप इज मैनी टू 1 और 1 to many, then the key of the many side entity set will become the key of the relationship. So इस केस में अगर ये मैपिंग 1 to many है तो कस्टमर आईडी विल बिकम द की. ठीक है. अगर ये मैनी टू 1 है तो अकाउंट नंबर विल बिकम द की. एंड मैनी टू मैनी के केस में क्या है, मैनी टू मैनी के केस में दोनों एट्रीब्यूट्स जॉइंटली जो है ना, दोनों की जो है ना मिल करके की का काम करेंगे. लाइक सपोज दैट ये जो मैपिंग है ये मैनी टू मैनी है. अज्यूम दैट दिस इज मैनी टू मैनी मैपिंग, देन इन दैट केस बोथ द एट्रीब्यूट्स विल जॉइंटली बिहेव एज द की. ओके. एनी कन्फ्यूजन? बहुत सिंपल रूल है, 1 to 1 है. सो किसी भी एंटिटी सेट की पार्टिसिपेटिंग एंटिटी सेट जो है उसकी की है वो आपकी की बन सकती है रिलेशनशिप की. अदरवाइज मैनी टू 1 या मैनी 1 to many है, देन द की ऑफ द मैनी साइड एंटिटी सेट विल बिकम द की ऑफ द रिलेशनशिप. If the cardinality is many to many, then both the attributes of the participating entity sets, that is both the key of the participating entities will become the key of the relationship. ठीक है. दोनों को कंबाइन कर देना है कुल मिला के यह है, और वो रिलेशनशिप की की आपको मिल जाएगी. ठीक है. नाउ लेट्स कम बैक टू द वीक एंटिटी सेट. नाउ यू सी दैट वीक एंटिटी सेट के केस में क्या किया था हमने, लोन और पेमेंट की जो है टेबल बनाई थी. नाउ लेट्स से व्हाट वी विल डू फॉर दिस एंटिटी, दिस रिलेशनशिप. सो लोन और पेमेंट के केस में अगर लेट्स अज्यूम आप टेबल बनाते हैं लाइक दिस, अगर आप नॉर्मल जो देखें आइडिया हमने जो डिस्कस किया था, अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट वी विल हैव ए टेबल लोन पेमेंट. सो व्हाट विल बी द एट्रीब्यूट्स इन दिस टेबल, ऑब्वियसली दोनों साइड से की. So that means loan number, then discriminator EMI number, and if there is any attribute of this payment that should be there. So entity set का अगर attribute है तो वो यहाँ आ जाएगा. नहीं, so generally कोई भी attribute अगर है in case of strong and weak entity set, that attribute comes here automatically. So this will not have any attribute actually. So you see that the table of this relationship having only two attributes, the key from both the sides actually. So here there is no key actually, it is a discriminator. I am using the term key, but it is a discriminator or partial key. So you see, you can observe that this table is redundant. Whatever information you will store in this table, that is already there, loan number and EMI number. So this is a redundant table. This is a redundant table because इसमें कोई भी नई information नहीं है. This information is already available in this table, redundant. So what we do, we do not create a table for identifying relationship. Remember this, whenever you will have a year diagram and if you have any identifying relationship, you will not create a table for that. Got it? If you have any identifying relationship, you will not create any table for that. Any question?